Can we talk?
No.
Victorious Buddhas, compassionate ones, throughout the infinite worlds of the 10 directions, grant your blessings so that the inner and outer work that I accomplished today bears the fruits that multiply beyond imagining and extend to the very limits of this existence, to benefit myself, the ones I love, and the countless other beings of the 6 realms.
Thank you, Julie. Hello, everyone. You can now sit together. I hope everyone's doing all right. In the last session, I guess I was telling you about Bun's father who had fallen ill with COVID. His condition had actually worsened and he ended up in the hospital under oxygen and everything. But I just wanted to, report that he has recovered now and he's back home and he's feeling much better. So
Good to hear.
quite good. He was relieved. But it seems that fathers are in the news this time because Neojax, one of the instructor of our Sangha, actually lost his father yesterday after a long illness. He had, I believe, terminal cancer. So if you see Neojax around, you want to say a kind word, well, he might get, will probably appreciate it. And so that's the good and bad news for today. Aside from this, pretty happy to see you guys again. Weather is getting very nice over here outside. We're starting to feel like it's summertime, and I do appreciate the dedication and the fact that you guys are still coming and attending those sessions despite the weather getting better. So you are serious about your meditation, and I can appreciate that.
Yeah, my
Today-
cable's not long enough.
Today we have a session that is pretty packed. It's like a review, so if you skipped a few sessions in the past, you might enjoy that for catching up. I think because of the content, I will probably read myself and discuss with you and read again a little bit and discuss. Otherwise, I think we won't get through this in the depth that we should. So, yeah, it should be a good one. But let's start with our meditation that we do every time. So let's take a deep breath to get in the mood. And then start relaxing our bodies and our mind. So let's try, all of us, to keep our eyes a little bit open this time. Sometimes I say you can close your eyes to get a better meditative state, but I feel we should also practice it the right way a little bit as well. So close your eyes like 3/4 of the way and look about at a 45-degree angle in front of you. Then start relaxing all the little muscles of your head, starting from the top of it, with special care around the eye so that those lids fall naturally. Eyebrows are relaxed, cheeks as well. Relax your ears, jaw. Let your jaw sit naturally. Make sure your back is straight and use the little balancing trick. And that your neck is also aligned. That the way your head is sitting on your neck is not causing any tension on one side or the other. If you're wearing a VR headset, you might adjust the angle a little bit, compensate for the weight of it. And then breathe deeply and out. As you exhale, relax your shoulders, the upper back region. Let your arms fall naturally in your lap. Your hands relax on your fingers. Put special attention around the spine area. Make sure that left and right of the spine there are no big tensions. Release the muscles there when you bring your attention to the region. Relax your lower back well, the belly in front, your legs and feet. So let's take another deep breath, and after that we'll keep our attention on it. But as you exhale, start following the breath with your mind. It helps, you might take a point in your body where you're feeling the fresh air coming in or out, be close to your nostril, could be the back of your throat, could be in your tongue. Then focus your attention there, noticing the changes when the air comes in and out. So that everything is very subtle. Nothing else matters, that everything else goes. Just your breath. Mind wanders and please bring it back to your breath. And use every time you exhale to deepen your meditation. And just focus on doing that with the Revelry. Try breathing a bit deep. So the end of it. Pay attention to the gap between breathing in, breathing out. You may try to extend that gap every time through a breathing cycle. Right. Hope you guys managed to relax a little bit. Did anybody manage to observe the gap between breathing in and breathing out? Is this part of your normal practice?
Yes.
So it's interesting because as you bring your attention to that gap in your meditation, first you must find it, but kind of is there naturally, right? And so when you find that little gap, you can start thinking of it as the ground from where the breath is born and where the breath goes also. Because there's a gap when you breathe in, there's also a gap after you breathe out. And so concentrating on that can become sort of a meditation on emptiness while occupying breath. It's very good for, it becomes sort of a merge between shamatha and vasana. So I encourage you to do that when you practice shamatha. All right, so as I said today, we are covering the ways of practice, and so there are many concepts that we have discussed before that will be mentioned in the lecture today. The way I like to do that is I will read, well, I have sort of paragraphs that are numbered, so I will read a section, and if you guys have questions or commentaries, you tell me, because that's what it's for. Basically, it's a review. We want to make sure that we all understand and that no notion escape us. I will try and do a short commentary when I feel it's necessary of what the lecture is saying as well. So let's take it off like that. Just raise your hand or plainly speak if you if there's something that bothers you or if you have any questions. Don't be shy. So the ways of practice. For those who seek enlightenment, there are three ways of practice that must be understood and followed. First, disciplines for practical behavior. Second, right concentration of mind. Third, wisdom. What are disciplines? Everyone, whether a person is a common person or a way seeker, should follow the precepts of good behavior. One should control both the mind and the body and guard the gates of one's five senses. One should be afraid of even a trifling evil, and from moment to moment should endeavor to practice only good deeds. What is meant by the concentration of mind? It means to get quickly away from greedy and evil desires as they arise, and to hold the mind pure and true. But its wisdom is the ability to perfectly understand and patiently accept the fourfold noble truth, to know the fact of suffering in its nature, to know the source of suffering, to know what constitutes the end of suffering, and to know the noble path that leads to the end of suffering. So, commentary there. The contrary of the fourfold noble truth is called ignorance in Buddhism. Therefore, wisdom is the opposite of ignorance. Those who earnestly follow these three ways of practice may rightly be called the disciples of Buddha. Suppose a donkey that has no nice shape, no voice, and no horns like those of the cow was following a herd of cows and proclaiming, "Look, I am also a cow." Would anyone believe it? It is just as foolish when a person does not follow the three ways of practice but boasts that he is a way seeker or a disciple of Buddha. So the way I like to think of this part is that you are a Buddhist when you are acting like a Buddhist, when you are applying Buddha's principles. And when you are doing something else, let's say you're acting like a football player, well then you're not a Buddhist anymore. In that moment, you're a football player, right? So I have hesitated a number of years to call myself a Buddhist because like most of us, I am not always behaving and thinking perfectly. The only reason I've decided to do it is so I could be an ambassador for the teaching and kind of say, okay, I want to share that with you. And this is about the Buddha. But frankly, if I'm having a bad day where I'm losing control of my mind, of my body, if I'm stuck in my desires, my dark clouds, then I am not practicing Buddhism appropriately. If I become angry or fearful, in that moment I am practicing Buddhism. Well, not that I shouldn't become, but it should be mad. I should be conscious of it, doing something about it. That's the practice. So that's the thing here. You know, if you're not practicing, even though you might know everything and all the scriptures by heart, you're pretty much just a donkey and not a Buddhist at this moment if you're not practicing. That's the essence of the point. Before a farmer gathers a harvest in the fall, he must first plow the ground, sow the seed, irrigate, and remove the weeds as they come up in the springtime. Likewise, the seeker of enlightenment must follow the three ways of practice. A farmer cannot expect to see the buds today, to see the plants tomorrow, and to gather the harvest the day after. So a person who seeks enlightenment cannot expect to remove worldly desires today, to remove attachments and evil desires tomorrow, and to get enlightenment the day after. That's an important one that and kind of goes hand in hand with the previous one. Just because you get it doesn't mean you're there. You might have a very profound intellectual understanding, but have you undone your programming, or are you still a slave to your habits and to your prejudice and to your to mental reactions and impulsions? Because if you are, and if that's still driving, then again, you are not really moving into that violent space. There was a psychologist that, to illustrate how trauma got woven into the brain, and I guess it worked with habits as well. She would make that demonstration and say she would use Play-Doh of different colors, and she would say, okay, so this little ball, this little blue ball is something that you lived at 4 years old, and this is something you learned 7, another color, and then this is like your workplace, and it's green, and And so she would have all of those little balls, and then she would stack them on top of one another, and then she would kind of mix the dough. And then she would say, okay, so remove the purple trauma from this ball. And you get instantly like an image of how difficult it is to reprogram. So these habits were formed and they're connected with many other aspects of your personality and of who you are. It's part of your base programming now. So just because you've understood that you, for example, that you have the habit of eating at night and it's not good for you, just because you got that, doesn't mean that you will stop doing it instantly. You need to develop new habits and to feed your mind differently. So I guess that's what it's about. Uh, Receiving your basic training in Buddhism is a small fraction of what you actually need to go through personally, and the rest of it, no teacher can give you. I cannot go and stop you from eating cake in the middle of the night, can I? Right? So that part is on you, and that's a true practice, frankly. When you start to notice things about you like that, you need to take charge, take responsibility for them. I'm just providing the pointer or the introduction, and that's why it's always presented like this. The entire Buddhism teaching is always presented as a pointer, and also as a personal experiential path, because we're pointing to you basically, saying, look, you meditate and you will find out what's wrong with your life, and once you find it out, well, maybe spend the next 10 years trying to fix it, and then you're going to be happier because you're going to do less evil to yourself and to people around you. There will be less suffering. Now, some people have a super good will, and they're able to make big changes in their life fast. But that's fine as long as you're not being violent towards yourself, because you would be creating another problem. You're mistreating yourself in the name of change. That's not necessarily better. You're just learning to mistreat yourself in nature. So you need to find great balance there. So that was the end of the first little part. Questions or commentaries there? Does it ring a bell with you guys? Yes, Malka?
I have a question not related, but can I ask it now?
Sure.
Why in Buddhist and in Bhagavad Gita and many other Indian books they use as reference to lotus flower, and they also put the lotus flower in the books as an like ornament? And does it have like any like spiritual meaning, like this allegory to lotus flower or something? Like, I don't know.
Yes. So lotus flower is many things actually in Buddhism. First of all, it represents enlightenment, or it's like the yin and the yang. The white part would be the lotus, because a lotus flower grows in mud. So they're saying basically, if you have never suffered and if you have never known the mud, you cannot appreciate the beauty of the flower for what it is. Therefore, you cannot appreciate nor even get enlightened if you have never suffered in life. So that's the first thing about the lotus, is that it's a contrast teach, if you will, and also a non-duality teaching, saying that without the mud, the lotus is nothing. Without the lotus, the mud is not really disgusting either. So that's one parallel that they do. But the lotus, and depending on the color of the lotus specifically, there are many different teachings, but usually it will represent the feminine principle. It's often compared to the reproductive organ of the female, but it also represents basically your being harmonious with your emotions. So it's sort of astrological, tarot, and other traditions speak of femininity like this. So skillful means in Buddhism are the masculine energy. So that would be like logic and math and all of those kind of insensitive, cold skills. And the feminine principle is everything that is warmer, like social skills, emotions. And so the lotus represent that. So if as a man you pick up a lotus in your practice internally, it means that you are fusing the masculine and the feminine together, and that basically you are becoming a more complete human being, a more harmonious human being, where you are operating from your heart as opposed to only your mind or only. So in a nutshell, that's what it is. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, kind. Thanks.
Yes, Mark? Yes, Mark?
That's better. The precepts talk about intoxication. Does a Buddhist do not get intoxicated because he needs a clear mind? Because it differs from a Christian.
Yes, it basically, well, it's not that you cannot get intoxicated at all, although this is what the precept says. It's about really not losing control. So imagine somebody that when he's having a drink, he starts to yell and starts beating on stuff or on people, or he wants to pick a fight, or he starts crying. And obviously his emotions and mind are out of control, so that's no good. To have, let's say, a drink, if you're extremely stressed and all of a sudden you have a drink and it relaxes your mind, then it becomes sort of self-medication. So it's not great either, right? So it should be avoided because it's an external means to an end in general. But all the precepts are transgression lines, as I pointed out in the past. So it's not necessarily that you'll go to hell if you do it. It's more like, pay attention, when you're having a drink, stuff might happen that you will regret or that you might not be proud of. If only the headache that you will get the next day. It's kind of dumb to partake in that and expect great things from it.
Then you drink too much.
Right, so I guess that's kind of what Buddhism is warning us about there, that if you're going to do these activities, there will be consequences.
Yeah, definitely. Okay.
Yes, yes, Niala?
Do Buddhists drink in general, or do they avoid drinking, like they don't drink at all?
It's only very bad Buddhists and very enlightened masters tend to drink. Meaning that those who don't have control at all, well, they just fall into it. But there are also very high practices that involve drinking a little bit of alcohol to relax the mind and do some visualizations. So it's everything in Buddhism. There's no black and white Buddhism, right? There's no duality. So to the question, do Buddhists drink? Well, some of us do, some of us don't. Do Buddhists eat meat? Some of us don't, some of us do, right? It's like that about, there's a folklore and there are recommendations, but you are where you are on the path, and that's where you should start. As you gain better understanding and better realization, they will kind of start following up you. Do your best, I guess, to have a life free of suffering would be the basic. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Niala?
Mm-hmm. No, that's thank you. I didn't know that actually.
All right. Yeah, Disco?
So I guess somewhere along the same lines, I'm wondering if it's okay to sort of have negative emotions and tap into them every once in a while. Like, for example, if you're playing a competitive sport like rugby, it's sometimes good to create that us versus them mentality just in the space of the competition. So let's say your team is up against the other team in a scrum lock, and you're just shouting to your team, "They're nothing, we're gonna crush them." And that motivates the people, that gets them going, and it makes them work harder. So in the space of the competition, it's good. And I'm wondering if for those kind of moments it's still okay to tap into what would normally be considered these angry, negative emotions.
Um, you know, if you are cultivating and fostering those kinds of feelings, you are kind of building that path in your brain and in your heart, and then it's easy to kind of go back to that whenever you are faced with a competitive situation. And then you might play Monopoly with a 7 years old and decide you will just crush him because you
Happens.
are that competitive, right? Basically, what you are describing is what the army is using to dehumanize the enemy. When they're talking, for example, the terrorist. Terrorist is not a race, is not a color, is not even a person. It's just an abstract group of people that deserve to die. And if not, they will call them rats or pigs. And so they reduce them to animals or inhumane. You hear a lot of these words, and they use that in training. You know, they have the soldier stab dummies and so stab the rat. You know, and the idea there, and now with virtual reality and the simulators and use, it's even worse because there is a layer of technology separating them where they're basically turning into computer characters. So you're operating a drone and you're basically just shooting stuff and trying to pass the level is what war is turning into. So it's not very good for your sensitivity. People that are reprogrammed like that by the army after the fact and after the war, they struggle many years to regain their humanity, and they start hating themselves for what they've done when they realize that they have killed children and civilians, you know, people that didn't deserve to die at all. Obviously, I'm putting it to the extreme right now. It has nothing to do with a rugby match, but can you see how it kind of relates that we are removing the humanity of a group of people so we can destroy it? Otherwise, it would be too painful. Right? It would be, you don't want, if you're considering that this is a great human being, maybe as nice as your mother and or father or your sister and brother, then you would have a hard time crushing them just like at 7 years old because you're compassionate than I. So the better way, I would say, to compete and practice sports is to make it a very spiritual internal practice. They say that the man that conquers himself is better than a man that conquers an army of 1,000, right? So that's where it's at. Like, if you could share that mentality with your team where everybody is trying to be the best that they can be, but at the same time, instead of crushing the opponent, they're even there to help and teach them. If you are practicing, for example, Shoshin, the unshakable mind, or great resilience, or beginner's mind, so that you can, that's what Shoshin means, the name of this work. So if you're practicing Shoshin so that you can learn from the best athletes in the world, you know, competition doesn't necessarily have to go crushing people. It could be just a bunch of amazing athletes trying to be better than they ever was, and that could be the motto. And I believe it could be even more fun. But that's me, right? Does that resonate a little bit with you, Disco?
Yeah, I can see that perspective for sure. Especially when you can boil it down to a simple motto like that, you know, like, let's do the best we can, then I think a message like that can definitely get across to other people in your team.
But I'll give you
What
one
about,
thing.
yeah, go
The
ahead.
juice, when you are kind of focusing on getting yourself better, I'd compare it to, it's like cooking an entire meal just for yourself, right? When I'm alone, I tend to eat toast or a sandwich or something simple because I don't feel like going and doing a 5 services meal just for myself. It's too complicated. So I don't have the same juice, the same motivation. So obviously, if I'm with a team and everybody has that kind of electric energy where they say, yeah, let's crush the red, uh, I can see a lot more juice in that than you just trying to cultivate yourself, doing the best you can do. But That's kind of a lie because over time you can get the same energy. It just takes a little bit more time to cultivate. It's like a new way of working with it. But there's a time in between when you try to shift that dynamic where you basically feel like not depressed, but almost like, where's the juice? What happened to my motivation? Like, I don't feel like making all those sandwiches for myself. That's kind of what's happening there. So there's a catch in it, but if you go through it, it's a good catch. It's actually very helpful.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I'm struggling with is when you take that sort of spirit away, that competitive spirit away of, when you take that competitive spirit away, that almost takes away some of the fun bits, like, friendly rivalries between two local towns. Like, that can get really fun if in a friendly space you're you're okay, I have a hard time explaining this, but rivalries can be fun, and all I'm trying to say is that it's like when you take that out, it sort of takes some of the fun away too.
Right? So I would like to invite you to give it some thought this week. Like, try to imagine a world without competition and without rivalry, and think of everything that would be gone, from the exams at school to a lot of the fashion, a lot of capitalism, so many things without competition would be transformed in the world. And maybe try to visualize that and see what you prefer and how necessary competition is. Some of it is occurring naturally in the world, for sure. And some of it is unescapable. For example, I call it the law of the jungle, right? But do we need to create more jungles, I guess, is my own personal question there. So I will leave you to
Okay.
think about it, and maybe you tell us next time what you think about it, what you found.
Sure. And maybe just to give one more example, I don't want to like hold this up for too long, but let's go back to the negative emotions, and I still feel like sometimes it's necessary to tap into them. Like, for example, let's say you are a father and you're out with your daughter late at night, and some weirdo starts picking on your daughter. So you firmly say to, like, leave my daughter alone. But if he persists, just to get the point across, sometimes you have to get angry. So what do you think about that?
Right, so that's using then your emotions as a tool, and there is some zen there where you're making a conscious decision that this situation is unacceptable from an intellectual and emotional point of view, then you decide to act. So that's different than just yelling at everybody whenever something that doesn't fit to what you're expecting, what your expectations are, right? It could be legitimate. And Buddhism is not about being emotionless. It's just about being in touch with our emotions and understanding them instead of just feeling uncomfortable when they arise and, running left and right when it happens. So if your heart and your mind are working together in unison, if your body is also aligned with that, that becomes a very powerful thing. And that is how actually you unleash your full potential. Same thing, and that's basically why in competition they do that. Because if you were considering that you're crushing your little brother, you could not unleash your full power. So you need to first have your emotions to agree with what your body's going to do and what your mind's going to do before you can actually go and unleash your full power upon those people. That's the same. It's just that it's created artificially. These techniques that are used by the army and by professional trainers and the CIA, the minds were studied, and even Buddhism was studied to bring that about. But they're just used for not a very good goal. So it can work both ways. We have to be careful because you could decide, in the same way that you would protect your daughter, that a certain category of people are evil people, and now you want to kill them. And because you're so good and so resilient with your emotions and so resilient with your mind, that you could go and kill people and still function pretty normally in society. Well, that would pretty much make you a psychopath. So there's a thin line, you know, between being in touch with your emotion and acting wholesomely and just being skilled at mind control and doing bad things with it. So we have to be careful about that.
Thank you. Yeah, that really clarifies it for me. Thanks.
Pleasure. So section 2 is, it is difficult to advance along the path that leads to enlightenment, so long as one is covetous of comforts and luxuries, and his mind disturbed by the desires of the senses. There is a wide difference between the enjoyment of life and the enjoyment of a true path. As already explained, the mind is the source of all things. If the mind enjoys worldly affairs, illusions and suffering will inevitably follow. But if the mind enjoys the true path, happiness, contentment, and enlightenment will just as surely follow. Therefore, those who are seeking enlightenment should keep their minds pure and patiently keep and practice the three ways. If they keep the precepts, they will naturally obtain concentration of mind. And if they obtain concentration of the mind, it will be just as natural for them to grasp wisdom, and wisdom will lead them to enlightenment. I like these little phrases there, so let's look at them again. Why do you think that if I keep the precepts, I will naturally obtain the concentration of mind?
Sorry, I didn't catch that. Could you say that again?
Why do you think if I keep the precepts, will I obtain naturally concentration of mind? Yes, Medley?
Well, there's of course the point that
Because you don't wanna mess up.
Sorry, Malka Medlich was answering. I don't know if you can hear him, but
yeah, I will answer real quick. Because if you don't have these negative things you do, you don't have a lot of distractions in your meditation,
I
for
can't hear
example. You
him
have a
at
more
all,
clear mind.
actually.
Could you hear me, Senke?
yes, I
I
can hear
can
you.
hear-
That's
I can
probably
hear.
a chair bug.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe,
Me too.
maybe Malka, you want to reload your world.
I think so.
All right. So
Well,
sorry
that's
again.
at least a part of it. I
Medlich.
think I'll try to say it again. Maybe yeah. So I think if you keep the precepts and behave well, then you have less distractions in your daily life and also in your meditation, and this benefits you. That's at least one point.
Right. So I think the key word there is distraction. So that's the thing. If you have chosen, for example, I will not lie, then obviously if you want to keep that precept, you have to pay attention to what you're saying. And before you say, you have to think about it. You have to think of a lie before you say a lie, right? So automatically, if you're trying not to lie, your mind will go back. You will be observing your mind basically all the time. And if you're trying to observe more precepts, I guess you'll be observing your mind more intensely. And that is how concentration, that muscle is being flexed. You know, that is how over time the greater concentration is built. So yeah, instead of thinking of what you're going to cook tonight, you might be thinking, did I lie today? And that's already like greater concentration and less distraction from what you have decided is important. So that is how it works. And how would a greater concentration of mind contribute to wisdom? Because that's what the last part of our paragraph was saying. It said, okay, so first you watch yourself with the precept, and then you will acquire better concentration of the mind. And then looking at your mind, you will develop wisdom. How is that? And remember there the root of suffering. Remember ignorance according to Buddhism.
because you know how your mind works and other minds of other people, how they think and how they can react, and if they are suffering, how they cope with it, because you cope with it.
Right? That's maybe like one step further than what I wanted to say, but that's valid. So basically, let's take the same example. I observe myself because I don't want to lie. Well, sometimes I won't make it, right? Sometimes if I'm in the habit of lying, sometimes I will say a little lie. And when I say a little lie, there will be consequences. And I will notice them because I'm looking at that precisely. So I might see people making uncomfortable questions to me. I might see, if I said, oh yeah, I went to Brazil. So somebody can come next week and ask me about Brazil very specifically and ask me tourist advices over there, and then I'm screwed. So if I've been taking great care, if I've been focusing a lot on not lying, and then I do, I'm going to see all the consequences and all the suffering that it's causing me unfold around the little lie I told. And so it becomes a very conscious process. And then, yes, after that, I can easily affirm to someone, hey, look, when I lie, I have this experience, maybe you wouldn't like that. Maybe that's going to cause suffering. And they might say, oh, a little lie won't hurt. But because you've made this entire process conscious. And so that's how it works. And also, first you decide that you're going to pay attention to some behavior or some mental habits. Second, through this, you get to see, you get to get better at looking in. And then third, as you look at those things and at those transgressions, your wisdom is growing. So in a nutshell, that's the entire practice. That's what being a Buddhist is about. And that's why nobody can do it for us, looking at ourselves, observing our transgressions. While and the Catholic God is supposed to be watching that and sending us punishments. I don't know. I think that through Buddhism, you see that it's not God punishing you, it's actually you. That by starting the action, you are creating the punishment itself. And that becomes very obvious that it was not divine intervention, it was just karma.
Yeah, I'm not somebody who wants to lie, but sometimes I need to do a little lie, because if I tell the truth, it will be it will hurt them, or they will not like the truth.
So you are, again, are you doing it skillfully? If you are lying out of habit, just because you don't want to deal with someone or you want to impress someone, if your intentions are bad, that's one thing. If your girlfriend is asking how I look in that dress, that's another thing. You don't want to hurt people just for fun.
No,
so
it's mostly good intentions, so...
Yes. So if you see that your intentions are good and you want the person
yeah, because
to feel
I want to be
it.
compassionate and kind, so only if I do tell the real truth, yeah, they won't like it, so...
Right, but again, we have to be careful, because imagine someone, and let's say their kid let's take something very serious. Their kid has disappeared and they're looking for their kid right now. And someone tells you that the kid has been found dead, and you are with that friend, and you know that the kid is dead. Are you just going to tell them, hey, I'm sure they will find your kid, just because you don't want to be the person that's going to be the bringer of bad news? Same thing with a terminal illness. Imagine like our parents would get that, and I don't know, maybe their memory is so-so, or they don't understand exactly what's going on, and so basically the doctor tells you, will you tell your parents, or will you allow them to remain in blissful ignorance? So it's about motivation, but it's also about the seriousness of the situation.
That's definitely true. those situations are, I like to call them big lies, because you're really keeping someone from knowing the truth about their body or their life or something. But if it's a really small thing, yeah, you can put a little lie in it to make it a bit positiver than it seems to be. Than you think it's gonna be.
I would say that most often, as far as right speech is concerned, most often silence is golden. When you know something, like, don't try to make it better, don't make it worse either. And if you have to give the information, try as much as possible to give the information that is true, but do it in a delicate, understanding, and compassionate way.
Yeah, that's what I need to learn. A delicate way.
Right. So yeah, I'm
Thank
not
you.
really sure how we got into all of this, but I'll follow up with the reading. I lost the path of the reading as well. So as already explained, the mind is the source of all things. Did I read that already? Oh yeah. Okay, so indeed, these three ways, keeping the precepts, practicing concentration of mind, and always acting wisely, are the true path to enlightenment. By not following them, people have for a long time accumulated mental delusion. They must not argue with worldly people, but must patiently meditate in their inner world of pure mind in order to enlighten. So maybe it happened to some of you if you come to these classes, and I know it happened to me in the beginning. Sometimes I would learn a concept and I would get excited, or it would apply very well to somebody I knew very well, and then I would want to share about it. And basically the reaction was just like I belong to a sect or something. It was very frustrating because I just wanted to share the riches and I couldn't really because they were not receptive. I guess this little paragraph is calling to that. Like it's a personal internal practice. Let's share it with those that have ears and eyes to understand, and if not, as long as it's helping you, that's plenty. If the three ways of practice are analyzed, they will reveal the Eightfold Noble Path, the four viewpoints to be considered, the four right procedures, the five faculties of power to be employed, and the perfection of six practices. I don't want to get too far ahead, but you see how, as we were observing a lie with the precept, we built our wisdom a little bit. Well, if you keep on observing everything that you do at the mind level, you will see that you probably need to keep your behavior in check, speech in check, your meditation in check, many of your habits. And so that's why they say you would kind of rediscover the Eightfold Path. And one could pretend or think that this is what the Buddha went through, actually. He started, once he understood that he was causing his own suffering, that most people were causing their own suffering, and he started observing his mind, which he had done as an ascetic for years before that. I think he just connected the dots and saw that, oh, if I observe myself in such a way, then I will grow a lot in wisdom. And as the years taught me, now I barely suffer because I have all of these things under control. Everything's monitored, and I don't lose it as easy. So you can, that's what not only makes you a Buddhist, that's what makes you a Buddha. When you go through these insights and you go through those realizations, you see and you become convinced that any human could have discovered, any human that took the time to look, to pay attention to that discovery. We all have them in common. So that's beautiful. So the Noble Eightfold Path, to just remind you, refers to right view, right thought, right speech, right behavior, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And here the lecture gives us a little quick review of each of them. So right view means to thoroughly understand the fourfold truth, to believe in the law of cause and effect, and not to be deceived by appearances and desire. Fourfold noble truth, always hear it like this when I speak that there is suffering in my life and I am the cause of it. All right? That's what's really, in modern day language, that's what the fourfold noble truth means. There is suffering in my life and I am the cause of it. And then, of course, that goes hand in hand with cause and effect. I have just established that I am the cause for some of these events. Yes, Niela?
Is there a way not to get the consequences, or like how do we make a life so we get a peaceful life and get like the causes that we like send in the future that can be like in peace? Does it make sense? Like,
Right? That's what Buddhism is about. Everything that we're teaching here is about that. So basically, once you realize that you're sort of self-sabotaging yourself, and you start looking at yourself, then these things that you do that are creating suffering in your life, you will start abandoning them. You will stop feeding them. And as you do, more and more peace will be created in your life. It creates space, basically. So your neuroses are replaced one by peace. Your programming is replaced by peace. And as you spend more and more time on the path, you are claiming back that love and that freedom. So it's
Thank
really
you.
meditation is the number one tool because we learn to observe our mind. Yes, Casper?
I wonder, this self-sabotage that's all too common with people, is this known that this only happens with us humans, or are there other animals of higher life form that people have discovered that they do some sort of internal self-sabotage as well? Or is this just something with us, our human nature, that this is going on?
can I say something to this?
Yes, sure.
I just heard that there was actually a chimpanzee war. I don't know where it was, but you can read it on Google. If you Google it, you can find that animals fight as well and have wars, and it lasted for 4 years or something like that. Maybe this will answer your question. It might be not only humans, but I don't know. I just read it.
That's a good example. Like, can chimpanzees hold a grudge? Apparently, yes. Most animals don't do that a long time. They're very good at letting go, often better than us. But also, Casper, can animals become anxious? Can animals become depressed? What would you say to that?
Well, yeah, because I've seen it. I've seen it especially with some, with like dogs and even my parrots, because birds tend to be. I think they have like the mind of a 4-year-old. Sometimes some people say, but my parrot would start plucking her own feathers out and yeah, like almost self-harm, that we would say for us humans. She would start stressing out and plucking out all her feathers. It wasn't a pretty thing to see. There was also no logical reason.
So here's
Yeah.
here's the interesting thing. Do you think it's more likely to happen to a bird in a house or to a bird in nature?
I think more with a bird in a house, in all honesty, because my parrot's entire life was in the house. Well, I guess a parrot in nature could always move on, but and pets, like pets with humans, they can't really do that, I'd say, because they are attached to the environment that they have to stay in, so they might face that same thing over and over again, I assume.
So that's why Buddhism call animals sentient beings. Because obviously if you take enough time to observe them, you will They do have feelings. They are capable of self-sabotage, of paralysis, and I don't really want to get in the ethics of any of this, but yes, I do believe that animals do it. However, if you see animals in the nature setting, in their natural place, it's much less likely to happen. And you know what? Look at humans in the countryside and look at them in the city. I was born in the city and now I live in the countryside. And whenever I go back to the big city, I find that everyone is so green. They all look like sleep deprived and nobody wants to look at one another. Everybody's lost in their mind. And it's impressive to me as well. So it's about coping with yourself and coping with your environment as well. And the more challenging the environment, the more coping skills you need. And that seems to be affecting us and animals. I wouldn't say equally, but to a certain degree. And then there are other organisms. They say that it's good to play music or to talk to plants. I don't know about that, but why not? And then you have insects. They seem to be social. They do fight also and eat one another. And so what's that about? What's the consciousness of an insect? And then you have the marine creatures that, people are there fishing the seas saying that fishes don't feel anything, don't know anything, which to me is a bunch of crap as well. So, through observation and contemplation, we can see that we have so much more in common with the world than we first thought. And that's how we start understanding how we cause our own suffering and how we can cause that suffering in our environment as well. Basically, being a vegetarian in Buddhism is not really an ecological idea. It's more from this, it's seeing that they do suffer. When you send cows or pigs to the slaughterhouse, they get nervous and they go nuts and they cry and yell. They know what's going on, So it's those realizations that convince some Buddhists. I would say all Buddhists are convinced of this idea, but some Buddhists are more attached to eating meat than others because they were raised on it. And so it's not everyone that is as good as to let go of that addiction, but probably we all share the same ideal about it. Not sure how I mix those two topics together, but I hope it answered something, Casper. Yes, Malka?
Because they are us and we are them.
Would you care to elaborate on that?
Yeah, like everything
same?
is connected and we are basically one, right? So we talking about compassion to one another, but basically we one big creature that have compassion for itself. But while we're living in illusions that we are separated, we might experience disconnection while we are here in this relation.
Beautiful
So the ones that
commentary,
choose
Malka.
the ones that
Keep on,
choose not
go
to
on.
eat meat, they basically don't want to meat itself meat, more or less, right?
Yeah.
Out of compassion
Yeah.
to ourselves
Yeah.
and to
Right. So when you start considering oneness on top of it that you are doing right now, yeah, it's even more. Sometimes I like to think of our mind and our emotions and the spectrum of what we can experience as like radio waves that are playing all the time. And each of us and each creature is basically just a little radio that's being built and it's tapping into that. But there's only one program and one spectrum that we are all collectively experiencing. And so when you think of it like that, then the interconnection becomes a little bit more obvious. And then it makes you wonder if rocks are not feeling the same, if the entire planet is not alive. And I'm not talking about what's on it, I'm talking about its core. Maybe there's a consciousness to the sun and to the universe. Maybe even in dark matter, this consciousness and this feeling is there. So when you start thinking of the world like that as a sensitive place, then you kind of don't want to step on anything afterwards, right? You just don't. You want to make sure that you're careful with everything you do, and that's a beautiful teaching from Buddhism. It's essential, and they call it emptiness, but it's a full emptiness. It's that invisible thing that connects everything there is, invisible to us. Maybe there's a bird or something that sees it and can step it more skillfully than you. All right, I'll carry on with the Eightfold Path there. So, right thought means the resolution not to cherish desires, not to be greedy, not to be angry, and not to do any harmful deed. So I like how they say cherish desires. It's not to cherish and then desires. So, but think of the sticky desires, the sticky passions. So that's what we really have to care for here, because it's when a sticky desire gets frustrated that anger is born as well. We spoke a lot about that in past sessions. Right speech means the avoidance of lying words, idle words, abusive words, and double tongues. So again, silence is golden there. Right behavior means not to destroy any life, not to steal, or not to commit adultery. So I guess this is like the mindfulness of the body. I would need to use my hands and maybe weapon to kill something. To steal also, it's much farther than the thought transgression there. It's I thought of it, I made a plan, and now I'm acting out of the plan. So these things are, I'd say, a bit worse than other transgressions. Right livelihood means to avoid any life that would bring shame. Well, what's shame? Shame is a strange concept, but let's say anything that doesn't agree with your integrity. Let's say anything to something where your mind and your heart are not in agreement together. And your body. Let's say your mind and heart agree that you should be eating potato chips all the time, but your body certainly won't agree with that. So it could, once you're 800 pounds, maybe you start to feel a little bit shameful of your body. So obviously, anything that brings imbalance in your life should be avoided. Then right effort means to try to do one's best diligently toward the right direction. And so rightfulness means to be pure and thoughtful. What is purity in Buddhism? I just want to remind, because I brought that on a few times. Purity basically means of one essence. So if I would qualify that as a schizophrenic mindset. If in your mind you have a bunch of voices fighting with one another, you should probably decide what voice is yours, what voice you want to follow, or decide that it's just noise and act from your peace center instead. And that's probably what the pure mind is about, that mind that is undisturbed, onto which chatter is playing. That's the pure mind. Right concentration means to keep the mind right and tranquil for its concentration, seeking to realize the mind, your sense. So again, that's the peace, and that's bringing back the peace. So mindfulness is recognizing what goes on in the mind for what it is, and concentration is the going back to it. All right, let's do one last little section, and then we're going to still have a lot of material for next session. So the 4 viewpoints to be considered are: first, to consider the body impure, seeking to remove all attachment to it. Second, to consider the sense senses as a source of suffering, whatever their feelings of pain or pleasure may be. Third, to consider the mind to be in a constant state of flux. And fourth, to consider everything in the world as being a consequence of causes and conditions, and that nothing remains unchanged forever. So that's the entire block number 4. So let's consider the first point there. Why should we consider the body to be pure? To me, in 2021, that sounds weird, right? But actually, that's what you would call a Buddhist antidote. If you are lustful, if you're plain horny, and you want to be with other people in that fashion, and you are delighted in the beauty of the body, then you can easily become a slave to those desires, and then that could take you to commit adultery or get with somebody that doesn't really deserve to be with you, or bad people, or can get you in a lot of trouble. And these instructions also, they were often communicated to monks. So in some Buddhist texts, monks is celibate, right? The monastery, they're celibate. So they would say, okay, so if you see a cute girl, imagine her corpse, imagine her dying, losing her hair, imagine her eyes rotting, her flesh decomposing, imagine the pus going out of every holes. And so they would have those visualization exercises to keep, so that they would create repulsion instead of creating attraction, that they may keep their vows. And that's the reason why they talk about the impurity of the body, that they use it like that as an antidote to a strong desire. But you could, if you are addicted to drinking beer, you could do pretty much the same practice, imagining something very repulsive about it, or fixating on a very bad consequence so that you keep your distance. But some would argue that you are also reinforcing the problem. Yes, Casper?
About that repulsive, especially with beer, I've heard that one before, but in terms of like you said with the monks with celibacy, that they try to see, when they see someone passing by, like a beautiful girl, that they start thinking like that. Isn't that sometimes as well, and we see this often in the main religions, that this causes even more conflictions and sometimes even sexist behaviors towards one community of one sex towards the other community of the opposite sex. For example, there have been enough about the Christian church, sometimes with priests and, or certain parts of Islam practitioners with how women have to be dressed and so on. So yeah, and that's a danger zone, I guess. If you
right,
keep thinking
that happened in Buddhism. That happened in Buddhism as well. There are some texts that for a number of years believed that women could not become enlightened because they had, reprogrammed themselves so much to see women as lowly, uninteresting, disgusting beings, that then they could not possibly imagine that those people would be enlightened afterwards. So, and that's where I was going actually at this point. I think it reinforces other problems when you are starting to think of your body as impure. So there's another way that monks have been using that is not in this paragraph, unfortunately, but they say to look at another woman as if it was your mother or sister in another life. And so you wouldn't do to that person what you wouldn't do to your mother or sister. So I think that's a better approach, more compassionate, and it also allows you to love that being from afar. So I prefer that kind of approach. But basically, it's better to maybe just not fuel your habit. So I know of people who train themselves, and they as they train, they look in a mirror to make sure they're developing well. And I guess that's okay if you're training and that's your activity and you do that to stay fit. But then if at home you have put mirrors everywhere so that you can look at yourself brushing your teeth and combing your hairs. You can look at your arms while you're combing your hairs, and you can look at yourself in the bedroom and by the door. That becomes a little bit vanity, so you're feeding it too hard a little bit. So whenever you have an obsession, just try not to invest all of yourself in it. Yes, Mark?
But do Buddhist monks who do celibacy take it in their own hands? So do they masturbate or something, or just don't do anything?
Actually, it depends on the sect. Again, in Vajrayana, there are even sexual practices where you are actually trying to not indulge completely. So you would bring yourself to the verge of an orgasm, but not go thoroughly with it or prevent ejaculation. So they train with that as a means to control their other desires that may be not as strong as sexual desire. But people are people. Don't go thinking that Buddhist monks are perfect. They do masturbate, I'm sure. They probably sleep together, some of them, just by the course of spending 20 years living in the same room with another guy. It's like in prison, right? They might get together at some point. And some of them go and have kids as well, and they break their vows. That has nothing to do, I think, with the religion or the philosophy itself, but it has everything to do with how feeble the human mind can be when confronted to those strong pulsions.
Yeah, and it's like a self-love.
Right. Niall, I think I saw your hand up. Do you want to say something?
Do Buddhists, I don't know, I just know there are Buddhist monks, but they're separated as well, right? Like female and men, or is there a difference or no?
Again, the thing is that contrary to the Vatican, which would be a central authority for the Catholics, Buddhism does not have a central authority. So it varies a lot according to the country and the lineage. So some are mixed, some are men only, some are men and women but separated, and some are women only. So I don't have and some sects allow you to be married with children while being a monk as well. So these tend to be my favorite ones because I'm married with children. So it's kind of practical for me, I'd say. But yeah, it varies a lot. There are more conservative countries and more conservative lineage that say basically your family will be a distraction and you won't do as well on the path if you are exposed to all of those distractions. And there are other schools that would say, well, no, on the contrary, if you practice with a partner and you practice with a family and you practice with work and you practice with a normal life, then you are exposed to so many different sources of challenges every day that you can become wiser and stronger to do that. It depends how you go about it. Depends which group you join. In the West, I'd say that we're pretty relaxed about it. I didn't hear of too many celibacy vows in North America nor in Europe, but in Asia it still happens quite a lot. What time is it now? Let's I think let's okay, now let's finish this one, and after that we can do our meditation. So after the body's impurity, there was seeking to remove all attachment to it. And the idea of removing our attachment to the body there is that we will be sick, we will grow old, we will die. That's inevitable. And so if that comes as a surprise, like modern society would like it to come as a surprise because we have all of those creams and perfume and now stem cell therapy and surgeries. People want to stay forever. And so there are a lot of people now that when they reach 50 years old, they become depressed because they don't have the body or the health that they had. Because they didn't tame the process. So in Buddhism, they say, okay, it's better you become a bit detached from it already. It won't last forever. And also, your mind is kind of beyond that, right? We were realizing together earlier that we probably share the mind with flowers and insects and animals. Maybe the entire universe is operating on that. So maybe that's the real us that deserves our attention and our grooming. Then it says consider the senses as a source of suffering, whatever the feeling of pain, pleasure may be. So basically, I like to think of them as an IT guy. I like to think of the senses as inputs. Basically, they're your keyboard and mice. That's how the information gets in you, and the output, like the screen or the printer, is what you're going to speak and what you're going to act upon the world. But don't try to communicate any information to the computer without using those inputs. It cannot receive it. So that's how our senses work. And the computer has a lot of trouble resisting when we type on the keyboard, right? It's kind of spitting back the letter immediately, unless it's been reprogrammed to do something else with the letter. So in the same way, we get stimulations into our inputs, which are our five senses, and we are sort of programmed to do something with that information that we receive. It's very important to guard the senses doors, and the same way that you observe your mind, if you actually go one step further and you start observing your senses, if you start observing everything that you're looking at, everything that you're listening to, everything, then you will probably cut it short. Like you will cut it before you get triggered. And this is very close to a secret Tibetan practice called Shoshin. It's known in India as Ati Yoga. And it's that special discipline of looking at the world right at the source of the experience, so that nothing really triggers you. It's almost like cutting the cord of the keyboard. You see that the letters are being typed, but they're not allowed to be processed by the computer. And third, to consider the mind to be in a constant state of flux. So what is that? What that means is if you say, oh, I'm like that, if you say, I'm a reliable guy, or I'm a proud person, or I'm a beautiful woman, or if you have this idea that is very fixated, that is very solid about who you are, well, realize that this is false. It will change. There might be times that you won't be reliable or it's how life is. And don't be sad when that happens. Just accept it and do your best to go back to your ideal. Keep your aspiration in the right place. And finally, fourth, to consider everything in the world as being a consequence of cause and condition, and that nothing remains unchanged forever. So I would say that's the same as the previous point. Your mind is changing all the time. Your identity is changing all the time. They say you can never step in the same river twice because it's not the same water and everything. Even the little rocks and the sand and fishies, everything has moved in the river every time you step in it. So is the world. You can step 2 times in the world. And I don't know if you've been there, but sometimes we meet people or we are around people for 25 years and we think that person will never change. And then one beautiful Tuesday morning, that person does exactly the contrary of what we would have expected her to do, the contrary of what she's been doing for the last 25 years. And you're like, wow, that's so unlike her, or that's so unlike him. I'm surprised. Okay. So there you have it. Everything changes. Even mountains erode. Even the sun will extinguish at some point. We are moving, the Earth is moving across the universe with its entire galaxy at crazy speeds. Not only can you not step in the same room or in the same river twice. You cannot even step in the same units twice. So let's just be clear about that, and then we will understand why everything is susceptible to frustrate our expectations. So on this, let's go back to do our little second meditation, unless you guys have questions or commentaries about that letter. Or maybe some general thing that you'd like to share. Yes, Niala?
I don't know a lot about Buddhism actually, but I have some questions. For example, do Buddhist people have like prophets or something like this, or
So the
is
minute
it just
that you
Bud-
it's not that there are no prophets. Like everybody is a prophet, if you will. Everybody is a Buddha in Buddhism, because all of us share that same potential to end our own suffering, to find our inner peace, and to take refuge in it. And when you have stabilized that peace in your life, you are basically a Buddha. So Buddha is a title. It means the enlightened one. So the minute that you achieve enlightenment, the Buddha's title is yours. And that's why some enlightened masters right now are giving conferences, and they are writing books, and they are extending the Buddhist knowledge, because there are many Buddhists, and they come every year, and they've been coming for thousands of years now, and for thousands of years to come, more will be. We would consider that Jesus Christ and Muhammad and the prophets of other religions are people that found that peace actually, and that connected to that source and to that wisdom. So it's a pretty inclusive religion, where we don't believe in Superman, and we don't believe in mystical gods sitting on clouds, but we do believe that we don't know everything about the world, that some things are beyond human comprehension, and that we have something in common in our humanity that everyone can tap into, no matter male or female, young or old, disabled, not. It's accessible to everyone. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
I have another one. I don't know, is the avatar thingy from Buddhism, or is it from another religion?
Yes. No, it's from Buddhism. Well, it could be Taoist as well, but Taoist is very similar. The Tao is very similar to Buddhism in terms of its the harmony it tries to create with nature. So since the avatar is pretty focused on the elements, that's a very Taoist thing. I would hesitate, but it's somewhere in between for sure. The Matrix is pretty Buddhist.
Movie Matrix?
The Matrix, the movie The Matrix, yeah. Also, Star Wars has been inspired by
Yoda.
The Force, that's been inspired by Buddhism and Taoism. So, Casper, you wanted to say something as well?
Yes.
Usually you're the one talking about the Avatar, Casper.
Yes, I know the Avatar. Yes, I know. But yeah, I was reading that there indeed have been Buddhists after Gautama was his name, I guess. This specific Buddha. That is the prince. That there have been Buddhas before the main.
Shakyamuni Buddha.
Yeah. Yes.
Siddhartha Gautama.
Yes. So, but there have been Buddhas even before him. They said that I was reading at one point. So, what makes this specific Buddha that Buddhism's? Why hasn't, for example, a Buddha before him established this kind of Buddhism? Yeah.
I guess this one was better at teaching.
Might be that simple indeed.
Yeah, sure. The previous one, you might be a Buddha and nobody will ever know about it, right? If you keep quiet. So it could be that there were 10,000 Buddhas before this one and they just didn't tell anybody. But this one thought it was important to share it, and so it started to preach.
I
I think
actually
that's
I
the thing.
actually read that when he
He
got,
was also a king,
yeah, I actually read when he got
well, a
enlightened
prince.
that at first he still didn't know at first if he wanted to teach or keep it for himself or something. I think it was in that book
Right.
that I was reading that he himself didn't know
When
at
I
Right.
had
first.
my Yes, I just like to repeat that because I think it's useful as a practitioner. When I had my first significant experience of opening my eyes, I was excited and I wanted to teach, and a senior monk told me, "You shut up for at least a year." And it didn't make sense. It was frustrating in the beginning because I wanted to share what I had known. But then in that year that I shut up, it made so much sense that I decided not to speak for 10 years about it. And then I started to teach because I could see that I knew so little when I thought I knew everything, right? So there's that component as well. We have to be humble about our own realization. And maybe 10 years was not long enough, but was long enough for me. So then I started, uh, meaning that I was impatient, not that I made it in 10 years, right? Still have a lot of work to do. Daniela, well, actually, Medlish had his hand up before.
Yeah, about the Buddhas and the previous Buddhas. The thing I read was when the Dharma is lost in the world, a new Buddha is born and he will teach us again. And if this knowledge gets lost over time, and it normally will, because even this is impermanent, then a new Buddha will be born someday. This is the way I
Right.
heard about it.
Right. So that's very Indian Buddhism, which they have cycles of time, cycles of creation and destruction. And so the birth of the Buddha is kind of aligned with this, and at some point, yes, it gets lost, and then a new cycle begins, and a new Buddha appears. And but typically, they would say that you need the teachings for difficult times. So if everything's going all right with the world, you don't really need those tools. So Buddha is smart, and it appears and shares it with us when we need it. But also, we're receptive when we suffer. Nobody's drinking cough syrup when they don't have a cold, right? It's the same thing with Buddhism. Uh, the reason this class is pretty much full all of the time is a symptom of how we live as a society, and of the fact that we need tools to feel happier and make our life worthy. Niala, it was something you wanted to add?
I want to ask, first of all, I wanted to ask which king he was talking about because I didn't understand. And the second one is if, like, there were like avatars, yeah, was the Buddha an avatar as well or not?
So, in a way, let me go with the first question. So, Siddhartha Gautama was a prince, the historical Buddha figure. He was a real guy, and he was head of the Shakyamuni clan, and he was destined to be king, but he renounced the crown to become a spiritual teacher, and this had been prophesied by wise men. Now, there's a lot of
Oh,
drama around that,
Can-
but basically, he was a prince.
can someone write this in the Discord chat because I didn't understand the name? If it's okay.
Yeah, no
Yes,
problem.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Malka, if you do it. And so your second question was the Buddha an avatar? And the answer to that would be me asking, are you an avatar? And without letting you answer it, I would say, you are. Because you're a manifestation of this universe, basically. So you are made of stardust. You are made of feelings and emotions and sense experiences that permeate the entire world. And so you are just a way that the universe has found to look at itself and to regulate itself. So in that way, we all embody something else, part of something else, and we are avatar. So in Buddhism, we call that the Buddha nature. Like the Buddha nature is everywhere, and it's in you, and you are an envelope for the Buddha nature. You are an envelope for light.
Even the Buddha
But
himself?
it's not the concept of a soul. Sure. So the Buddha himself was just a guy, you know? He was a wise guy. He found lots of great things on himself, on his own, but he was a guy. There are no magical people in Buddhism at all. Right.
That gave me shivers.
Sorry?
That gave me shivers. I get shivers from.
I hope they were good shivers. Malka, there was something you wanted to react, I think?
Yeah, I heard that before the Buddha had enlightenment, he had to bring his own woods to the fire, and after he had enlightenment, he had to bring his own woods to the fire, or something like that. So basically, that means that each one of us can be like basically developed to a certain level of Buddha and starting realizing some really good things. But our daily life will not be different because we will have to bring the wood to the fire, or like how it goes. It goes differently in the original, But what I mean, do you think the life of a human changes, like the daily life of bring the wood to the fire to heat the people up? Will be changed once someone achieves the level of Buddha, because on some level you can create like an alchemy, something from nothing, because everything is everything, so there is nothing that's everything. So like on what point you will stop to grab the wood to the fire, or this point will never happen because we are reincarnated in this dimension that is physical and it have a death and life. So basically, whatever like level we will get, we will still have to do the same things, basically, more or less, like depending on our level too.
Um, so the ironic thing about Buddhism is that you are perfect just as you are now, and you go through that entire journey to discover that. And what you discover is that you had been perfect all along. You had been fine all along, but you've been trying to fix yourself. And so it's very ironical because you kind of have to work so hard to just discover that you didn't have to. Because Buddhism is just about being. It's just about being there, but really there, really present, really harmonious. And that's all there is to it. But to somehow learn to be is the journey. Because we forgot that. We knew how to do that when we were little kids. When we saw a cloud for the first time and a bird for the first time and we rolled in the hay for the first time, we, had all of those children's games. We were really in the moment all the time, how to be. And funny things made us laugh, and bad things made us angry, or they made us sad. Well, what do we learn after that? We learn don't cry, and we stop crying. We learn don't talk too loud. This is a library. We stop talking loud, and then we say don't be happy here. This is a funeral. And you see, so we unlearn all that spontaneity and that natural harmony we had. We kind of spend a lot of effort burying it. And so we are just trying to shovel the dirt off of that being on our Buddhist set so that we can resume being dancing. So I guess it's little rocks in our shoes. We have to work to get the little rocks out of our shoes, and then we can dance again. But some of us have a truckload of sand, and some of us have two little rocks, and so that's why we don't progress at the same speed on the path. Does that make sense to you, Malka, what I'm saying there?
Yeah, but what I meant is like we're working hard all our lives, usually because we have these possessions and wishes to
Hmm.
achieve things. And as you say, we perfect as we are, so we can just go outside, sit on the grass, and say we are perfect as we are. We're just gonna eat some nut from the tree. But like what I meant that this reincarnation as a human makes us work hard automatically to promise the existence and survival. That's why also people make children sometimes, because they are satisfied to see this little creature will actually process the genes of the same person, right? You know, and it kind of have a false, maybe even illusionary satisfaction in those things, like to get a new car, to get flowers, to get something nice from this life. But once we reach certain level, are we supposed to like to manifest like manifest our being differently, because we will have to eat still. I think the original Buddha still ate the fruit, because of many paintings I saw, like Buddha like with some like other people, and together they like sharing meal or something. So like my question was about the hard work. On till what level we will have to hard work still just to promise our existence on this matter, even if we will be a Buddhist, like will we get our living out of uh by speech, maybe, if we will gonna teach another ourselves about what Buddha is, basically, because maybe that's what the original Buddhists of our time do, like Pema Chodron. Maybe like what she do for a living, I don't know, but maybe she writing book and getting some survival from this. I just trying to put the spiritual and material world and see how do we achieve this good balance with good spiritual level and good human being in mean materialistic way, like materialistic wealth.
So I would answer symbolically to that you have to work enough to care for your garden because you need to eat, as you said. So you need to care for those things that keep you warm and that fulfill all of your physiological needs. And once that's taken care of, that's the level of work you need to do. Now, symbolically, or taking care of your garden can go farther. Obviously, if you're living like in a, I don't know, a tropical forest, and you have a literal garden, and the weather there is good so it won't kill you, then basically you just have to worry about your culture and you're done. You're going to eat your stuff. That's it. Maybe you don't pay rent there. I don't know. But if you're living in a city, what does it mean to take care of your garden? It means to take care of your interactions with people. I think the key word is relationship. If you have great harmonious relationship with objects and people and the environment in general, then this harmony will kind of shine back on you. Because when somebody is sad, you will make them feel better. When somebody is happy, you will partake in joy. When they are angry, you might make them feel better about that. If you have too much food, you will share it. If you're not in distress and if you're not competing, then you have plenty. You have plenty to share, whether it's psychological goods, emotional goods, intellectual goods, or physical. And when you share with the world shares with you. And that's kind of how it takes care of itself. Imagine if you were spending all your time helping others will probably help back. Not all of them, but some of them. And somebody like Pima Children, which I know a little bit because I spent time in that monastery. So Pima spends most of not most, but like half the year in solitary retreat in a little cabin in the woods there. That's where she writes. And when she does indeed get a book out, the proceeds go to Shambhala Publications, which pay for the entire Shambhala school and Shambhala, well, the other editions, and they have a contribution to their monastery branch. And so not only is she able to take care of herself by working just a couple of months a year, but she's taking care of dozens of people. It's very powerful, actually, when you are caring for humanity instead of just caring for your own self. But it feels counterintuitive because we are not raised to do. We are raised to be better than the neighbor. We are raised to make a better pay, have a better car, and all those things you were describing. But it can be that you're very relaxed. One thing that is a soothing thought for me is that it is difficult in 2021 to die of hunger. Not only here in the West, even in the first world. Because people, if you know people, or if you can stand on a corner and beg for food, you will get the food much easier than you will get the money. Right? So as long as you have a will to beg, basically, it's difficult to die of hunger. That's how low you can go and still make a living. And that's what the bhikshus of the Buddha were. They were mendicant monks. They had no possessions except a mala and a bowl and the robe that was on them. And they would go from town to town, and they couldn't eat anything that they had not begged. Well, believe me, you could still live like that. And that's not work per se. But is this the life you desire? So you see, you say no, but why not? If you transcend your desire, maybe you don't care. Maybe it's just as good a life as one from a billionaire CEO of a big company. So your own standards will determine how hard you have to work to be happy. But what I know is that happiness is not external. And so you have to decide where you're content, and that's the beginning of this. All right, I think that's plenty of blabbering on my part. Let's do another meditation. As you know, I like to do the second one, is silence. So maybe you can reflect on the things that have been discussed today. You can do your shamatha, focusing on your breath if you want. Otherwise, you can vipassana. So vipassana is discursive, so you can bring back those notions and try to deepen it and see how they apply to your life. That's one way of doing it. And otherwise, you can meditate on happiness, passion, and getting good feelings. So I'll let you pick. Let's go with our session there. by the way, if you are struggling with your practice, having experiences that you don't know how to deal with, you can always feel free to contact me on Discord or here have a little chat about it. A meditation practice that is blocked is no good. So if I can help blocking you, happy to do that. All right, so I guess let's call it a day for now. That was a long session, and we did about 1/3 of what the content was about. So we still have a couple of great sessions coming, I'd say, on the topic. And Julia, if you still have some batteries, I would invite you to join me in front.
For the benefit of beings without exception, I dedicate without any reticence whatsoever all the merit accrued through virtuous acts to the incomparable expanse of totality.
Thank you. Namaste. Thank you all. Coming on again. Nice having you.
Oh no, I was going to ask him something. No.
You can still ask in the Discord.
Oh yeah, true.
Where's the Discord link?
Or I
I
can
nearly passed out during
ask.
the second meditation.
No, did you go too?